Today we're going to be taking an example of how to import data from an Excel file into Python. So as you can see, my Python file and my Excel file are in the same folder called 201 video. And so I'm going to basically open my Python file because I cannot double click it. And so I'm going to be typing my code in here. Let me just move that down here. And it turns out there is this library in Python called Pandas that will allow me to run or to move an Excel file or any data file, SQL, for example, into Python. So we are going to bring in Pandas, SPD, and we're going to go through a series of 3 steps. So before we go on to the steps, let me tell you what we were trying to do today. So we have a program we're going to write of an Excel file that has the usernames and passwords of people that are allowed into a certain program. And what we will be asking, so these are randomly generated or things that I've written. And we're going to be asking the user what their username and password is. And if their username is here and their password is here, then we're going to be letting them. But if they're not somewhere in the Excel file, we're not going to let them in. So the first step of the process is to let the data in. So to let the data in, we are going to be creating a data variable and call pd.readExcel. And the reason I'm saying read Excel, you have not seen this before, is because this is a library and it has differently written commands from the commands you'd normally see in Excel. And here I'd be writing the file name of the Excel file I want to access, which is called credential. And it's really important that you just don't type the Excel name. You also write the extension. And one important note about running when you have a library is if you're using Python, the runtime environment that you downloaded the library on may not be the one you're currently using. So what you should do is you should save, and then you should run through the command by writing Python and then Python code, which is the filename.py. And that is the way that we're going to be running our program. So let's open that again and continue doing what we were doing. So basically now we have all of our data in data. And if we print the type of Python of data, we are going to be seeing that data is of data frame because that's the class name or the class type of data. It's not something that you can do anything with. So what we need to do is we need to create 2 more variables, a variable that contains the usernames and a variable that contains the password. So to do that, we're going to be calling usernames. We're going to call that pd dot, let me remember that. Yes, we just called data frame. And we are going to be taking a data, and then we are going to be mentioning the column that we want to take in and put into the usernames variable. And so the column, so if we open the Excel file again, let me show you, we are going to be having the pass, the user, and the pass. So the usernames will contain the data, which the first cell is called user, okay? So if you do that, and you have to close that again, you will have data that has usernames. But what uses this if you cannot access it? So what we're going to do is we're going to change this a little bit, and we're going to create a list out of these. So what will happen here is we are going to be seeing the usernames in a list form in Python. Now, why I turn these into a string first is because the split function is only available in a string. So if we save this and go ahead and run on our command, Python code.py, we will be having the usernames. And of course, it contains everything. So it also has the zeros, ones, and twos for every username. Okay. So what you can do is filter these out, but we're not going to be doing that in this tutorial. Instead, we're going to go ahead with our third step here, which is creating a variable that contains the passwords. That'll be pd.dataframe, and it'll come out from the data and the columns information. That one will be pass. Okay. So just making sure the syntax here is correct. We also want the password. So you can say passwords to be more precise here is equal to str of passwords, just doing the same steps as above here. And basically that the dot split part is what makes it a list. Okay. So we have the usernames, we have the passwords. So now what we want to do is we want to ask the username. So we want to ask for the username. So we're going to be like, well, what's your username? And then we're going to be wanting to ask for the password and ask, what's your password? So we're going to see if the username and the password is in. So we're just going to say if user1 in usernames, and that's not enough, of course, and pass1 in passwords, then we're going to print welcome, for example. So that means that you're logged in. And else we're going to print access denied, and that is not very good news. So if we run this program using the way that we've learned, of course, we're going to have to save this first. You can click Control S, and then I'm going to run Python code.py. So my username is Mohammed, and my password is 234, and I was allowed in. So the reason why I was allowed in, because if we go back to my Excel file, you will see that Mohammed and 234 are together. So let's try this program, and instead we're going to say Mohammed and 5436. So we can click the up button instead of having to write the code again. So I'm going to say Mohammed, and so I want you to guess if this is going to work or not. So it worked, but in a real life scenario, that would not be the best case scenario, because you can just write any username and any password. So we're not going to solve this today, but what you would like to do is you would like to go through all the usernames and go through all the passwords. And in every single instance where you find that the username is equal to the username that is in the table, you want to have a counter variable for that. So in that case, that would be 3. And when the password that the user has put is equal to the password in the row, you want to store a variable for that. And then you want to check that these two are together, so that the placement of the username is in the same placement as the password. So that means that in a row, in a table, they face each other. And that's very important. And if you can do that in Python, then I believe you have a real working life application.